This is Scott the Fix-It Guy with a Whirlpool gas dryer. This is a Series 80 gas dryer that isn't heating up very well. So I set it for time dry, press start, and just gave it a test, and I noticed I was getting no heat. So I pulled the machine away from the wall, make sure it was unplugged, checking the vent hose, make sure it's not obstructed. But it looks good, it's nice and clear. And what I'll do now is I'm going to remove the back panel. So there's a series of 1/4-inch screws that we have to remove from the back. And then we get the back panel off. And there's a little thermal fuse that's actually really inexpensive and easy to change. And when these machines get overheated for some reason, usually due to a clogged vent tube, the thermal fuse will pop and no longer allow power to go to the heating system. And that's just to prevent fires. So it's a matter of finding out why the thermal fuse popped and then replacing it is really easy, quick and easy. So usually it's a clogged vent tube. In this case, I think the vent tube was just not clogged but crimped. So I'm using a multi-tester just to confirm that's what's going on. I put it on this little thermal fuse and I don't get any sound from it. I don't get any reading change, so the electrons are not flowing through there, so we know the fuse is bad. So it's pretty easy to replace. Here's the part number, and you can get these like on Amazon.com or pretty much any parts place, like Reliable Parts is great. Pretty inexpensive. And sometimes these just go out due to old age, maybe at the 10-year mark or 15-year mark on these machines. But usually it's due to part of the dryer got too hot, and that's usually due to a clogged vent tube. So all we have to do to put this in is remove a little 1/4-inch screw on the top end of the thermal fuse. And then we can just slide in the new one. To make sure it's unplugged, take the terminals off, and we're going to slide this fuse up and out. We'll put the new one in, go in and down, and then we'll put that little 1/4-inch screw back in. It's a very common problem on these dryers. They're actually very good dryers. We've had ours for now 25 years, same exact machine. But they will overheat occasionally. Again, usually it's a clogged vent tube. If you do this procedure but you don't correct the problem, then the little thermal fuse will probably go out on you again pretty quickly. I'm just testing the old one. Yeah, there's no response. And then the new one, we can hear a change, and we get a change on the meter also. So I'm also testing this other high limit cutout, which is also a way to protect the dryer to see if it's tripped, and it seems good. We get a nice beep from it. I'm also checking the thermostat, the outer leads on the thermostat down here, and it gives us a signal. So we know that those work, and it was just this little thermal fuse. So I'm going to put the leads back on, and I'm just making sure there's no junk caught in here. And then I'll put the back panel back on and reassemble it and give it a test. So I usually just position the bottom part on first and try to line up the holes, and then I'll put in like one of the 1/4-inch screws, and then I'll zip them all in. So sped up the camera here a little bit just because it's pretty self-explanatory, but we're just zipping all these screws in around the perimeter. If you're missing a screw or two, it'll still work. It's better to get them all on if possible. Because if there was a fire that happened inside the dryer, it's less likely that it can spread if this back panels are nice and tight. I've been really happy with our dryer. We've had in the past to replace a few little parts, but man, it just keeps going. Whirlpool did a great job on the Series 70, Series 80, and Series 90 washers and dryers. So putting the vent tube back on, we made sure it was clear. Probably though it was just had too many turns in it, or it was crimped. That was preventing the heat from getting out fast enough. So I'm kind of shortening it up by retracting it back toward the dryer, trying to get rid of some of the bends. I'm going to push it back in, and then when I get it in closer to the wall, again, I'll try to shorten it and get rid of any kind of bend or crimp. Sometimes to get more space, people will push their dryers too far back against the back wall, and it ends up crushing the vent tube, and then the dryer doesn't work because it can't get rid of the heat, can't get rid of the moisture. So on this machine, there's a little testing port in the lower left-hand front corner, and if you pop off this little plastic piece, you can look in there and actually see the igniter glowing, and you can see the flame. And that can tell you that the heating system is working again. So it should fire up pretty quick once you press start. So we see the igniter glowing, and there's the flame. So it looks good. So this dryer is fixed. On further testing, I found that it just wasn't, the heating system wasn't staying on as long as it should, so I found that the filter was clogged. We cleaned that up. I also decided that I would change the primary and secondary gas coils, because this is an older machine and they get kind of worn out, and they're not able to keep the flame going as long as they should. Pretty inexpensive and really easy to replace. So I'm going to go ahead and replace those and make sure that you've got the machine unplugged or you've got the breaker turned off, and then I'll just show you real quick the procedure to change them. Again, they're pretty cheap parts. So we got to remove 2 Phillips head screws here from the top panel that hide underneath the filter. And then there's 2 clips on the front right, front left, that are holding the front panel on. And you just use like a paint scraper to push in on those. Then you can lift up the front panel. Sometimes I move the dryer away from the wall a little bit so that I have room for that panel to go all the way up. And then I want to remove the door switch connection and just have to pry it apart. You can use a standard head screwdriver, or you can use, sometimes I'll use a paint scraper. Again, make sure that the dryer is unplugged. And then we're going to be removing 2 screws that are holding the front panel on, and they are in the upper right, upper left-hand corner on the inside. So you just zip those out. And then the front panel comes off, and then you can change the belt, you can change the gas coils, you can clean out the cabinet. You've got all kinds of cool things you can do once you get the front panel off. So I'm going to lift the front panel up toward me by about an inch. I lift it up and out. Now I have access to the gas coils. Here's the part number. These are called primary and secondary gas coils. They're just an electromagnet that lifts up a pin and allows the gas to flow in. But as the magnet gets weak, it doesn't lift up the pin long enough to really create a flame that is on long enough to really dry the close. I'm going to pull the little modular connectors off of the primary and secondary coils. And then I just have to remove 2 Phillips head screws that are holding on the bracket that holds them in position on the gas valve. So here's one of them real close to me, and then there's one about an inch further back. You can also remove the tumbler, the thing that tumbles the clothes, to give you better access to these screws. I just use this little angle tool because it's faster, so I can just get them out without doing as much disassembly. But to remove the tumbler is really easy. You just have to unloosen the belt, and you can just pull the tumbler right out. There's also a good opportunity to clean out any accumulated lint that builds up inside the machine. So we got the screws out, we pull the bracket off, and then we can pull off these 2 coils. They're different sizes. There's a bigger one here closest to you where the terminals are down close to the valve. And there's a skinnier one away from you where the terminals are up closer to the tumbler. On the big one closest to you, there's also a small round metal piece that fits over the post. Sometimes that'll come off with your old coil, and you got to make sure you get that out and reinstall that on the post before you put in the big fat coil that's closest to you. So we've got the new coils in, we've got the bracket back on, we're putting the Phillips head screws back in, get those tightened up, and then we'll put the plastic terminals that bring power to the coils back on. And that did the trick. That got this dryer operating as good as new. Hope this has been helpful to you, and please subscribe to our channel when you get a chance. Thanks for watching.